Do people like driving for Lyft and Uber? Welcome back to Buck Living, a channel all about making money. I'm currently home right now in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts, hence kind of the unique setup and everything, and unique camera angle. I want to film this video because I've gotten this question a lot. I've gotten so many comments on this channel, as you can imagine, and I've done so many videos about Lyft and Uber, the gig economy, ride sharing, and everything. And this is a big one because if you look at a lot of the comments I get, about 95% of them are negative when it comes to Uber and Lyft. And I will say, this is very important to understand right in the beginning of this video. As you all know, but this is important for this video, online stuff of what people say online can be very different than what people say offline. So my quick answer right away is, if you want to know, yes or no, no rambling, short answer, I'd say about half the drivers I find like it. I'd say overall, a good amount of drivers do like it more than you think. Now, there are a couple different things I am going to talk about when it comes to things like the pay and other unique factors, but I will say it's about 50-50. And I want to say this because I think more drivers than you think like it more than those who don't. Now, I know there's probably people watching this video saying, Marco, what are you talking about? That's BS. I will say this too. I have no affiliation with Lyft and Uber. I've gotten some comments like that. I've gotten comments of people saying, oh man, you're just promoting it because they're paying you. No, I'm just looking at the facts. I've interviewed over 1,000 drivers, both online and offline. The comments I get, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of drivers in different parts of the country and actually different parts of the world as well. And as a result, this is what I've realized. When it comes to the pay, because I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of people they want to know. And I'm going to talk about, like I said, the unique things when it comes to being a Lyft and Uber driver. When it comes to the pay, I'd say about 75% of drivers don't like the way the pay is working. I'd say 70 to 75%. And then about 25 to 30% of drivers do like the pay. So when it comes to the pay itself, I think that's how it breaks down. Now, you may be wondering, like, okay, Mark, that makes sense, but I thought you said before it's 50-50 when it comes to those who like it and those who don't. Here's what I find what really comes down to, and that's two main things when it comes to the benefits of driving. And this is why I'd say that about half the drivers like it. I mean, if anything, if you forced me to say, do you think more drivers like Lyft and Uber or more drivers don't? And this may be shocking to a lot of people. I'd say I think more drivers like it. And here's the reason why, and that's two main things. One is the logistics of Lyft and Uber in terms of what goes into it. And the second is the financial aspects. I think those are the two big things. And if you think about it, with Lyft and Uber, it is amazing what you can do. Now, first off, logistically, what I'm talking here is, do you actually like ride sharing in general? Ignoring the money, ignoring all these different things, do you like ride sharing? And I think for a lot of people, right, the answer is actually surprisingly yes. You can turn on the app whenever you want. We all know this. You can turn it off whenever you want. It is truly flexible. It's the closest thing to being your own boss without being your own boss. I've talked before in a bunch of other videos. I'm going to kind of go through this quick, but things like instant cash outs. The fact that, you don't have to have this crazy barrier to entry. I use this example probably 5 or 6 times already, that there are accounting jobs I've seen out there, and I had to get an accounting degree, in case you don't know, I'm a former accountant, that they pay the same exact amount, or actually some of them may be less than being a Lyft and Uber driver. I had to do all the schooling to becoming an accountant, but you can make that same amount of money, if not more, just driving Lyft and Uber, right? The barrier to entry is very small. You don't have a limitation when it comes to your hours. That's another big thing. When I used to bartend, I've used the example a bunch as well, as most of my subscribers will probably remember. I mentioned that I had people saying to my boss, oh, can I get more hours? And they couldn't. With Lyft and Uber, you pretty much have an unlimited amount of hours. So the first thing I think when it comes to driving Lyft and Uber that people really like about it is the logistics. And I think what comes with that, honestly, is the flexibility. I think that's the biggest thing. The flexibility to do it when you want, how you want. If you want to do it part-time, if you want to do it full-time, if you want to go back and forth, if you just need a secondary job. I think that's the first reason why people do like it, like I said. The second one is the financial. Now, this is where it does get a little tricky, I am going to be honest. And that is because over time, Lyft and Uber has not been the best about the pay. This is why I'd say if you go on my channel and you look at a lot of these videos, there are a lot of people who absolutely hate Lyft and Uber. But what's interesting, talking about online versus offline, is I'd say most of the drivers I interview in person, I'd say about 70 to 80% of those I meet in person and talk to love it. Like, they really, really like it. Like, they're like, oh, this is great. And they ramble on with all these benefits that I just mentioned. They talk about how they have more time with their family. They can go to their kids' dance recital. I've had people tell me, like, yeah, I used to be a truck driver. I used to be a taxi driver. I used to be a limo driver, was a big thing I was told. And I went to Lyft and Uber, and I'm so happy I did. So I get all these positive things. About 10 or 20% of drivers I meet in person don't like it, and we talk about the negative aspects. Online, it is completely flip-flopped. If anything, I'd say about 90 to 95% of drivers online hate it. And I do think there is, and this is why I want to do this video, there is definitely this hidden variable that, I mean, if you think about it, if you don't like driving for Lyft and Uber, you probably, and this is, again, my theory, you probably are more likely to watch other Lyft and Uber videos and comment on it to be like, I hate this. And like, I think it's one of those things that, if you go to a restaurant and have a really, really bad experience, you're more likely to post a bad Yelp review than, like, say, if you have a good experience and you're like, oh, that was great, and you don't think anything of it. I remember learning in psychology, this seems random, but very relevant for Lyft and Uber, that being uncomfortable is a lack of comfort, not the other way around. In terms of, if you walk into a room and it's super cold, you're like, oh, it's super cold. Or if you walk in and it's super hot, you're like, whoa, it's super hot. But if you walk in and it's the perfect temperature, you don't think about it, right? It's your uncomfortability is the lack of comfort, not the other way around. And when it comes to Lyft and Uber, or pretty much anything in life, I think about it, if you really hate something and you start doing it and you're like, oh, this is so bad, I think you're more likely, I think, if anything, to go online, watch YouTube videos, comment on them, and tell people about your story. Now, don't get me wrong. Is Lyft and Uber perfect? No. There's a lot of negative things about it. And I've talked before that, as time has been going on, you're paying their drivers less, and things are just not looking good when it comes to the pay. Which brings me back to the second point of what people like about it. And this is, I think, a unique thing, too, that could be a hidden variable. Because I've talked to some drivers who are making really good money. I'm talking consistently $25 to $30 an hour. Some drivers tell me they make $30 to $35 an hour on how they drive, when they drive, all this kind of stuff. They have the bonuses, they use all these different hacks, and they're like, hey, I can turn on the app whenever I want, instantly start making $30 an hour, and I don't have a college degree. How can you be that financial situation, right? How can you beat the fact, including the logistics, like I mentioned before, of just being a driver whenever I want? I mentioned this before. I talked to one driver in Austin, Texas. To use that one example of him, he was saying, he's like, I make 6 figures a year. And he goes, I drive 4 days a week. I hit all the bonuses. I think he's been driving for a while, so he gets all, like, the best rides and everything in Austin. But he's like, I make 6 figures. He's like, how can you beat making 6 figures doing ride sharing or driving for Lyft and Uber when any other job, I'd be stuck in a cubicle, I'd be told what to do, I'd have a boss, yelling down my throat of whatever, And so I think all these different things combined, a lot of people really do like driving. But like I said, there's probably a lot of people watching this video saying absolutely not. I know this is kind of like a very long open format video, kind of like a fireside chat style video. It's very unedited, just me kind of talking off the cusp and I want to be careful how I word this, because this will make sense, I think, to my dedicated subscribers. I don't have any stake in the game if people sign up for Lyft and Uber or not. I honestly don't. I do have my referral listed below in the description, but I want to say this as a side note. I don't get any referral bonuses at all anymore. The only reason why I have it in the description is because if you click my link and sign up, you get a bonus. I get nothing. By the way, in case you're curious. I don't get anything at all anymore, but I still do it because it helps out drivers, right? So I want to say this. I have no dog in the race when it comes to Lyft and Uber. My big thing, this is the reason why I want to do videos like this, is because I do know for some people, given their location, their schedule, what they're doing, their financial situation, their working situation, their education experience, that Lyft and Uber can actually be an amazing, amazing job to pick up. I mentioned this before, that when I was pursuing music, so I was just traveling today, by the way, so I'm super dehydrated. I don't know if it's just me. Quick side note, that when I fly, I find I always drink way less water because I'm all right, I'm flying, and I don't have to keep getting up and down to go to the bathroom. I usually drink about 1 gallon to 2 gallons of water a day, by the way. So if I'm way more dehydrated when I fly, and also too, the pretzels and the snacks they give you on the plane have like a ton of sodium. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, like when I was when I was working towards music and YouTube and all these kind of things I'm doing now that luckily worked out, Lyft and Uber was the perfect job. It was amazing. And like I said, I met so many other drivers saying, look, I was on the fence about joining. I was on the fence about signing up. I was on the fence about driving. I figured, why not? Let me try it out for a week. And I'm so happy I did. I hear those stories all the time. And I mean, if you think about it, I feel like if you're really enjoying Lyft and Uber, you're probably less likely to watch YouTube videos about it. I may be wrong, but I feel like, I don't know, at least for me, I feel like a lot of the people, I don't know, and I could be wrong. Again, this is just guessing when it comes to this. It's like a small side note that I feel like if you don't like driving, you're probably going to go to YouTube, watch a bunch of videos about Lyft and Uber. Like I said, definitely comment on them for sure. But maybe you're like, oh, I'm not making that much money. I got to watch videos about it, right? And it's interesting too. I've noticed that the videos they do that are like this, the very long format, open-ended, usually get the most negative comments, not towards me, but towards Lyft and Uber. The videos that I do about signing up, like requirement-based videos, get usually more positive comments. And I think maybe it's because, I mean, one, people have not started driving yet, so they might not know if it's good or bad. But I feel like for a lot of people, they sign up, they start driving, and for more people than you think, they love doing it. They do like driving, and then like, oh, you know what, this is great. And they don't really go back to YouTube. They don't have to give a rating. They don't have to give any comments, right? They just go out and they start driving. You know, I might as well say as a third point, besides the logistics and the financials, the third thing is also driving itself. I'm not going to lie. This sounds really weird. I mean, I love what I do now. I love what I do, right? But I will say there are some days where I actually do miss driving. There is something that's kind of nice about it. It was very kind of, I don't know, and I've done videos about this and I mentioned it and other drivers have agreed. There is something like almost oddly addictive about it where you can, because I mean, the ability to turn on the app, go out, like say, make $100, hit instant cash outs, and that money's instantly in your bank account. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty ridiculous if you think about it, like in a big picture perspective. And I know Lyft and Uber's not perfect. And I've done a bunch of videos bashing Lyft and Uber, going really in depth about the logistics and what they do, how they treat their drivers, things like deactivations that are going on now, and how they're paying their drivers less. They're taking out more money in terms of drivers' earnings as well. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're perfect. I want to make that clear. But I will say, I think in the past few months, most of the videos I've done about Lyft and Uber have been negative. They've been very negative in terms of talking about all the bad stuff, which there is, right? I don't like to create kind of like unnecessary hype or unnecessary fear, but I just like to call it out. You know, I call the ball as it lies, so to speak. But in this case, I was like, I do want to talk about the positives because, like I said, I've met so many drivers who said, you know what, I was on the fence about doing it. You know, like I said, I started driving and I love it. And I will say, I have no relation with Lyft and Uber, but one thing I will kind of promote and saying is that to at least give it a shot, because for me, again, I don't drive anymore, and I've done videos about that, and I've said that in other videos, but when I was driving, it was like the perfect thing. And I'm very grateful, and that sounds cheesy, you know, I'm very grateful that Lyft and Uber was around when I was really working on music, that I was like, oh, this is great. I wake up, you know, do the morning commuting hours, come back, work on electronic music, maybe film a couple videos, do a workout. I go out for the evening commute. I get done. Boom, I work about 4-ish hours a day. I was making just enough money. This is way back in Boston, though. 2015, 2016, when they were paying better as well, I will say. You know, I was like, I work just enough to make enough money. I have a flexible schedule. If, like, say there's one day where I don't feel like producing music, and like say I'm like, okay, maybe today I'm going to go out and drive all day, and then the next day I'm going to work on music all day. There's some days where I'd just be producing all day if I was finishing up a new track, a new EP, a new album, or whatever. And so the flexibleness, the money I was making was great, you know. And so, like I said, too, I might as well say as a third part, there is something that's fun about it, like meeting new people. Kind of reminds me a lot of like bartending comes to the social aspect of it, you know, and constantly getting rides and everything. It's awesome. So, yeah, so I think overall, I just want to say that a lot more people like driving than you think, especially for all my, like, I don't call them keyboard warriors, being honest, because I've never gotten anyone, well, I have gotten some bad comments on this channel, but I think most people who comment are commenting from experience. They had a horrible time driving for Lyft and Uber. And don't get me wrong, and I want to make this clear, Lyft and Uber is not perfect. And I will say, hate to say it, things have gotten worse, at least in my opinion, when it comes to the ride-sharing world. When it comes to the amount of money you're making, when it comes to the legal aspects, all these things I've done, the insurance issues, the activation. I will say, from when I started driving to now, things have definitely gotten worse. And there's no sugarcoating that. But even with that being said, I've still met so many people who are very grateful and happy they decided to drive because the way that ride sharing fits in with your schedule is perfect. And so at the end of the day, like I've said in a bajillion videos, at the end of the day, you just got to try it out, right? Give it a shot because you never know. You could try it and be like, oh my God, I love it. You could try and also be like, you know what? I hate it. And all those internet comments are right. Lyft and Uber is the worst. And don't get me wrong, like I said, they're not perfect. But at the end of the day, even though a lot of these comments on my channel, when it comes to talking about Lyft and Uber, seem to bash them and say they're horrible and everything, and I think a lot of those comments are justified, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, more drivers than you think actually do love doing it because if it works well with your schedule, Lyft and Uber and ride sharing in general is an amazing job to have.